Hello and welcome, my gold, silver, and crystal leaves. So, this is part 2, or generation 2, of 1 point of trivia for every Pokemon. And we'll start with Chikorita. Of course. Who else would we start with, right? So, for Chikorita, basically in early artworks, Chikorita was yellow instead of the light green we know today. The leafy necklace of bay leaf is always described as being spicy. However, actual bay leaf is rather bitter. Meganium is regarded as the herb Pokemon. But that clearly is a flower. Cyndaquil, as well as Charmander, and their evolutions all have the same base stat attribution. In the same distribution as well. Not very creative. Jeff Callis was the person who suggested the English name for Quilava. He suggested this specific name because apparently Nintendo, the Pokemon Company, wanted to have a Pokemon starting with the letter of each of the alphabet's letter. Here we have Q. Typhlosion, as well as Togetic, has never appeared in the Generation 2 anime and had its first appearance only a generation later. Weird, especially for a starter. Maybe Ash should evolve his Pokemon after all. According to Ash's Pokedex, Totodil's jaws can basically crush anything. That would mean they have such a tremendous power. They could probably solve the energy crisis or something, I don't know. It's way too much power, especially for an undeveloped Pokemon. In Pokemon Black and White, you could not trade an English Croconaw. Because apparently the name somehow contains a bad word. Which apparently is con? I don't know. Maybe I just don't get it. Like, what's wrong with the word con? It just means against. Not against something specific. It's just like in contradictory. That's not a bad word, is it? Feraligatr famously is missing the O in the name, coming from alligator, which is written with an OR at the end. This is simply due to space limitations on the old GBC cartridge. It couldn't display names longer than that. Sandred shares its Pokemon category, these weird things, with Petrat and his Hisuian Growlithe. Yeah, it kinda makes sense. They are known as the Scout Pokemon, so I guess that makes sense. According to Pokemon Scarlet, Ferret raises its young in a long and narrow nest. Now the problem with that is that the youngs would be centered, which aren't long and narrow, but round and, well, wouldn't they get stuck in that nest rather than being able to get out? Ken Sugimori once said that Hoot Hoot is his favorite Pokemon, due to him, back in the day as a child, having a pet bird that always stood on one leg. That's cute. Noctowl is, yeah, say it with me, the first shiny to appear in the anime. There isn't that much trivia about it, sorry. Ladybug's category in Japanese is Itsutsuboshi. And, well, while Boshi, or rather Hoshi, which turns into Boshi, can mean star with the right kanji, in this case it actually means 5 spots. This is mistranslated in most languages, including English, where it is known as the 5-star Pokemon instead of the 5 spots Pokemon. While Ledian is clearly based on a Kamen Rider, come on, there was never a Kamen Rider based on a ladybug though. Okay, one exception in a stage show, but you know, stage shows are, well, stage shows. Spinarak is based on a spider. Well, Spiders do have 8 legs. That's kind of what makes them spiders. This only has 6, so technically Spinarak is not a spider. Pokemon Scarlet says that from its back comes an endlessly long thread that is leading back to its nest. That actually makes sense, given that Ariada's name might be based on Ariadne, who, well, not to get too deep into mythology, gave Theseus a thread that could lead him back out of the labyrinth he was going in. Crobat is the first Pokemon in the whole National Pokédex that is the evolution of a Pokemon that has the number not come before it directly. So, Chinchou lacks a footprint and is only catchable in water. What's weird about that? Well, the anime and the games have shown it being capable to walk on land. Okay. In Pokemon Emerald, there is a trainer in the Victory Road that has a lantern. Oh yeah, that's not weird, but it knows Earthquake, which it cannot learn. Several Pokédex entries for Pichu state how bad it is at handling electricity and accidentally shocking other people and Pokemon. Though in the games that was never used in any way or capacity, like with a negative ability or something where it, I don't know, maybe sometimes fails using an electric type move or whatever. It's weird, and they could have done something with it. Cleffa is the only Pokemon having a base stat total of 218. That number is very special even, because... No wait, it isn't. Out of all the fairy Pokemon out there, Igglybuff has the lowest base stat defense. Not that surprising if you think about it. Togepi was the first Generation 2 Pokemon to appear, no, not in the anime, that was Ho, but in the video games. It appeared almost a full year before the release of Gold and Crystal in the well-loved game Hey You! Pikachu. Sony! Togetic, and its evolutions, of course, are the only Pokemon to appear in the Fairy and Flying egg groups. Natu, being tied to Rookidee, is the smallest flying type Pokemon. Xatu, and by extension Flygon, are a very special case, sharing their category not only in English, where they are known as the Mystic Pokemon, but also in Japanese, where they are known as the Spirit Pokemon. You're not a spirit though, you're a bird. Go to bird things. Marief's name is very interesting. The obvious part about it being based on Mary from the famous children's song Mary Had a Little Lamb. But it is also an anagram of ampere, which is a unit to measure electric currency. Fluffy is the only electric type that is... I'll let you guess in the comments for a second. 3, 2, 1. Pink. Yeah, that's weird. While it might seem weird to some people that Ampharos Mega Evolution becomes a dragon type, because what do sheep have to do with the dragons? It actually makes sense if you look at the Japanese name, which is Denryu. Denryu in Japanese can mean electric current, but the Ryu part can also mean dragon, so you could also read it as electric dragon. Bellossom is the only single type Pokemon evolving from a dual type Pokemon. And I think there could be more of those. It might sound weird at first, but you know, it's like some animals lose the ability to do something because they don't need it anymore when they mature. In the Space World demo from 1997 of Gold and Silver, Meryl looked quite different. Not only the tail, but also the color being pink instead of blue. So I guess if we have gotten this, it wouldn't have been Pika Blue, but instead Pikachu. Pikachu has a nice ring to it as well. And it's weird that both colors work for that pun. In Generation 5, Azumarill, and Marill respectively of course, are the only Pokemon that can have the sole weakness of electric. As in, not being weak to anything besides electric. Due to their hidden ability, Sap Sipper. Sip that sap. Did you know that Sudowoodo is actually not a grass type, but a rock type? Joking aside, if you think about it, this, Snorlax and Kecleon can be seen as counterparts to each other. All of them serving as roadblocks. A thing that the Pokemon Company kind of dropped after Generation 3. Politoed was the inspiration for... And I have to read that off from the screen, sorry. The roundworm species called Parapharingodon politoedi. Yeah, that came right. I have that memorized. Of course. In an early screen we have seen from Hoppip, it looked more like a small black cat without any legs and stuff, like only the head, with plants on top. Was this Sprigatito before Sprigatito was a thing? So if you think about Hoppip, Skiploom and Jumpluff, you realize their names will be based on Hop, Skip, Jump. Sorry to have nothing better for Skiploom, there isn't really much to find there. At 3 kilogram, Jumpluff is the lightest Pokemon that has undergone 2 whole evolutions. Makes sense. I mean, it's carried by the wind. Some Pokédex entries of Ipom mention how its tail is moving more dexterous than its hands. It doesn't really have hands though. Sunkern and its evolved form are the only Pokemon that can have Early Bird as their hidden ability. Well, sunflowers wake with the sun, I guess. Sunflora is Meowth's most used Pokemon disguise. Weird fetish. In Pokemon Sun, Moon, Ultra Sun, and Ultra Moon, Yanma can learn Leech Life through breeding. Oh yeah, the weird part about it is it cannot learn it via TM. Yet his evolved form can. What's up with that? Prior to Generation 9, Wooper was the only ground-type Pokemon that only consisted of a head, a body, and legs. No arms attached. I don't know why ground-type Pokemon need arms. I mean, legs seem important. But that's just the case. And it's not anymore. There isn't that much trivia, to be honest. Quagsire's Japanese name can be translated to King of the Swamp. Okay, I mean, I'm not into competitive, but is it really that strong? Then again, how many Pokemon can you actually find in swamps? In the Pokemon rap Gold and Silver, Espeon, as well as... what was its name? Sorry. Remoraid. Maybe I should reshoot this. Oh well, whatever. Are the only Pokemon that, if you would arrange the rap in the National Dex numerical order, they would still stay in the spot they are in right now. That sounded so confusing, but it's such a simple thing to say actually. Umbreon is the only non-psychic type Pokemon that has the ability to have the ability Synchronize. Murkrow is the only Pokemon that evolves with a Dusk Stone. And that is not a ghost type Pokemon as well. Jotonian Slowking shares its category with Pyro of all things. Now, it's the category of royal Pokemon, but given how many Pokemon have like king and stuff in their names, or queen like Vespiquen, why don't more Pokemon belong to this category? That is so weird. Despite Misdreavus being the only new Ghost-type Pokemon in Generation 2, the expert gym leader focusing on the Ghost-type isn't using one. Why are you so dumb sometimes, Game Freak? Come on. Aces should always be no Pokemon in my opinion. After Pikachu, in the Pokemon TCG, Unknown has the most unique cards with 92. Unknown! Right after Pikachu. Wow. Crazy. Ignoring Z moves, Max moves and Struggle, Wobbuffet cannot harm any other Pokemon if it isn't harmed itself. Girafaric's name is a palindrome, meaning if you read it backwards, it still spells Girafaric. So technically you should pronounce it Girafarich. That's rich. We have never actually seen what Pineco looks like, because, well, the actual Pokemon is underneath the shell, underneath that pine cone, being an insect. That's interesting. I wonder if we will ever see that. Fortress is the first original Pokemon to be the Steel type in the National Dex. Yes, Magnemite got it before it numerically, but it wasn't a Steel type in Generation 1 and it was added later, so hence the original. Dunsparce likes drilling, especially your mom. Gligar seems to be based on a gargoyle. Well, and the name implies that as well, even in Japanese. So, wouldn't there be an ability turning it into a rock type a great idea? Like, telling us this fact due to actions instead of just, well, some kind of name? I think that would be kinda cool. Unlike its pre-evolved form Onix, Steelix is shown to be floating above ground in all video game media of Pokemon. This might be due to electromagnetism or something. It is a Steel type after all. And fun fact on the side, about me rather, do you also think that Steelix would have worked better as like a regional form instead as an evolution? I think nowadays it would rather be a regional form, but tell me in the comments what you think about that. The route that you get a Snubbull Swarm in Diamond, Pearl and Platinum is Route 209, which is also Snubbull's National Dex number. That's neat. Granbull is one of the few Pokemon that is neither a Pika clone nor a legendary or mythical that shares the same name around all languages. Well, kinda, except Chinese. But Chinese uses the Japanese just in their own alphabet, and it's a whole weird thing, look it up. Quillfish and its Hisuian evolved form are the only poison-type Pokemon with fins. There's a lot of poison stuff down there, but I guess not many fish that are actually that poisonous. Despite them having different base stats, Scyther, Scizor and Cleavor all share the same base stat total. So you could rather see it as choosing which typing and distribution you want instead of an actual evolution in a way. Should have really just made them regional forms, I guess. Maybe nowadays that would have been the case. Well, okay, Cleavor could have been the case, but oh well. Despite it being unable to learn Surf, and also being weak to water, you can find it in the Sea Pal Park. Okay, Shuckle. I'm not gonna... Heracross can be seen as receiving a hand-me-down, as it is now the counterpart to Pinsir. And before that, Pinsir's counterpart was Scyther, but then Scyther received a lot of love, and Pinsir didn't. Until Pinsir and Heracross gotten Mega forms. Sneasel is the only Pokemon having a gender difference in both its normal and regional form. On top of that, Hisuian Sneasel is the only regional form with a gender difference. They really kinda have forgotten about the concept of gender differences, right? A bit. Not completely, but, well. Despite it being closely tied to the moon and night and all that stuff, given that it has a crescent on the forehead, it was never seen as nocturnal. Which, okay, might not be that weird, but I don't know. It would have been a great chance for more nocturnal Pokemon because honestly there aren't that many. Ursaring and Donphan, along with their pre-evolutions, are the only Pokemon to swap their version difference appearance. With them, like Ursaring and its pre-evolution appearing in Japanese and Korean silver, while in all other countries they are exclusive to gold. I don't know why, it's weird. Slugma has the lowest base stat total of all fire-type Pokemon. And that for a Pokemon being hotter than the sun. Shameful. Makago is the only Pokemon that was available in all main Generation 3 and 4 games since its appearance in Generation 2. Which it also was included in every game of that generation. Making Generation 5 the first time since its introduction to not appear, but given how Generation 5 treated old Pokemon the right way, well, that's not that surprising. Swinub and its evolved forms are the only ground ice Pokemon so far. Piloswine and its evolutions are the only brown ice type Pokemon. Corsola is the only Generation 2 water type Pokemon that is in the Water 3 egg group. Remoraid is the only Pokemon that can be seen on another Pokemon without it changing drastically like Shelder does. In the 1997 Space World demo for Gold and Silver, Octillery resembled a tank way more than it does now. Personally, I kinda prefer that old version. They should have kept that, definitely. Delibert's name should actually more pronounced be like deliberate, because it comes from delivered, as is delivering presents. But deliberate, I don't know, it sounds weird. Also, stay in the goddamn Pokeball next time. I have so many problems catching these things, I cannot believe that. In Generation 4, the evolution method of you requiring a Remoraid for your Mantike to evolve was introduced. And it was also the generation that removed Remoraid from the Mantine sprite. Ever since then. Geniuses. Skarmory, unsurprisingly, has the highest base defense of all the flying type Pokemon. Despite technically being a Generation 2 Pokemon, Houndour can only be found in Kanto in Gold, Silver and Crystal. So, can we assume that it's kinda an evil split of evolution of Growlithe? Huh. Houndoom is the only Pokemon that is neither an Ultra Beast, Mythical Pokemon, Legendary and all these things that has a unique battle track associated with it that no other encounter is using. Kingdra is the only Dragon type introduced in Generation 2. But at least we have a gym leader using it, unlike with a certain Ghost type. A Phanpy egg is the first egg that Ash in the anime receives ever, and also hatches, obviously. Donphan, Volcarona and Cyclizar are the only Pokemon to receive a past and a future Paradox form. Porygon 2 is the only Pokemon with a numerical in its name. No, type null doesn't count. It's written completely out. Stantler can be encountered on Route 36, which leads to Violet City. Violet City is the counterpart to Nara in Japan, a city famous for its wild deers being very friendly and you can actually pet them. Though don't force yourself upon them. Hold out your hand and let them come to you. That is how you treat animals, specifically wild animals. Due to Smeargle's signature move Sketch, it can learn every attack or move out there. Except there are a few exceptions because the Pokemon Company realized that is way too powerful, especially in competitive, and that would be a bit too much to explain here. Look up Wolfie VGC, he has a video on it. Tyrogue is the only Pokemon introduced in a later generation that ties together two previously unrelated evolutions. Well, they weren't evolutions back then, but yeah. And it also introduced a new one on top of it. On the Hitmontop specifically. And naming wise, Hitmontop is just a bit of a letdown. You have Hitmonlee being named after Bruce Lee, Hitmonchan being named after Jackie Chan, and Hitmontop being named after Spinning Top. Come on, there are more famous martial artists you could have used here. Seriously. And that goes for every language even. What's up with that? Smoochum is the only pink Ice-type Pokemon. And it can also haunt you in your dreams. Elekid, as well as its final evolution, is somehow based on some kind of electrical appliance. In this case, a plug. The problem is Electabuzz is not, which makes it a bit weird, honestly. Pokemon Scarlet states in the Pokédex that whenever it exhales, sparks come out of its nostrils and mouth. And it's a shame they don't depict that in the game, because that would have been very easy and would have made the game more lively. Oh well. Miltank can be easily seen as the counterpart, the female counterpart specifically, to Taurus. Taurus only ever being able to be male, and well, we have a cow that can only be female. When will we ever get a baby form that actually combines the two evolution lines here? Well, they aren't evolution lines yet, but I hope someday we'll get that. With 608, Blissey has the highest base experience yield of any Pokemon. What a bliss! Raiko's effort value yield of 1 special attack and 2 speed is unique, so go on and make use of that. Oh, yeah, legendary and everything. Never mind. Entei breeds by roaring. Because some Pokédex entries state, whenever a volcano erupts, a new Entei is born. While others state, whenever an Entei roars, a volcano will erupt. So if you put these two together, roaring equals breeding. Suicune is the only member of a trio of legendaries that is the only Pokemon to appear on a game box / cartridge, while the other two don't. Sometimes we have 2 of a trio, but yeah, only one. That only happened once. Apparently, this Pokemon evolves after eating enough dirt that could create a mountain. If that was true though, like, we would have a world full of giant holes and there shouldn't be more than like 3 of these things, so yeah, Pokédex entries being weird again. By venting pressurized gas, Pupitar can fly off like a rocket. So it basically moves by farting. Your Skuntank before Skuntank was a thing. Ew. Tyranitar, as of now, is the only rock dark type. Okay, I mean, Wolverock, Midnight form, absolutely not a dark type. No, why would you give it to that thing? It's just like an evil werewolf. Typing can be so dumb sometimes. Lugia is known as the ruler of the ocean, yet it is not water type. And the reasoning for that is because they wanted the legendary bird to be very powerful, and Psychic was a very powerful type. Why they didn't treat Ho the same way then is way beyond me, and you could also have made it a Psychic water type instead of flying. That would have been great, but yeah, in the TCG it is mostly a water type though. What can you say about that? Like, what the fuck? Ho is, not taking the opening into account, the first legendary Pokemon we ever see in the animated series called Pokemon. There's no title. It's called Pokemon. And finally, Celebi, which was the first Pokemon that is a mythical Pokemon that has been shown to be caught in the animated series. I have not seen that episode, honestly. And that is it. All 251 Pokemon have gotten trivia now. If you watched the previous episode, which you should, because it might be here on the screen. It might be here on the screen. Might be something else on the screen. I let YouTube choose whatever makes the most sense. So check that video out that you can see somewhere here. I am bad with left and rights. So leave a like, a comment, and a subscribe. And then we'll see each other next time when we go into Generation 3, Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. Bye me! What did I do there? That was a lot of energy, I like that.